Welcome back to Trending Tidbits. You know how we do things around here. We grab the hottest topics and squeeze out all that juicy knowledge just for you. And today, we are cracking open Stephen Bartlett's The Diary of a CEO, the 33 Laws of Business and Life. Now, I know what you're thinking. Ugh, not another book report.
Right.
But trust me, we're not doing that. We're just here to dig into the surprising stuff, the aha moments.
Yeah, the good stuff.
The good stuff.
The stuff you can actually use.
That you can use.
Yeah.
Okay, so buckle up. Do you know that having a plan B could actually, sabotage your chances of success with plan A? It sounds crazy. We'll get to that later in the episode. And trust me, the science behind it is fascinating.
Yeah. What I found really interesting about this is how Bartlett structures it. He divides these 33 laws into two parts, the self and the story. And that framework really gets at his core belief that you can't build a successful story, a successful business, a successful life, without first mastering your inner world.
Makes you think of that saying, inner peace, outer awesome.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But it's more than just like a feel-good mantra. Bartlett gets real about the consequences of skipping that inner work. He tells this story about Richard, this 21-year-old who gets offered this dream job.
Yeah.
CEO position, huge salary, the whole shebang.
It's that classic case of someone reaching for the shiny object before they've actually built a foundation. And as you can probably guess, it doesn't end well.
Yeah. What happens to Richard?
Well, he jumps in head first. He moves to New York to take on this new role, but quickly realizes he's in over his head.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the business ends up crumbling and he's left with nothing. And this is where Bartlett's 5 buckets framework comes in. He argues that in order to achieve lasting success, you need to fill 5 buckets: knowledge, skills, network, resources, and reputation. But, and here's the catch, the order in which you fill them is crucial.
It's like a recipe. You can't just, throw all the ingredients in at once and hope for the best.
Exactly.
So what did Richard do wrong?
Well, he focused on resources and reputation before mastering the fundamentals, knowledge, and skills. He gave the CEO position because of who he knew and the perception of his potential. But when things got tough, he just lacked the expertise to actually navigate the challenges.
Wow, that's a powerful lesson. I mean, think about your own career path. Are you focused on building genuine expertise first? Or are you tempted to kind of skip ahead, hoping to snag that corner office before you've really earned it?
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. And Bartlett is full of these thought-provoking insights that challenge conventional wisdom. For instance, he argues that arguing is the worst possible way to change someone's mind, even if you have all the facts on your side.
Really? I mean, I've definitely been in those heated debates where I'm like, I am right, and I just want to, hammer home these facts.
Yeah.
But he's saying that's the wrong approach.
Totally. He actually dives into the psychology of it all, and he explains this concept called cognitive dissonance. Basically, our brains hate feeling like our beliefs are wrong. So when you start an interaction by disagreeing with someone, you just trigger their defense mechanisms, and they're less likely to listen, even if you have all this irrefutable evidence.
So what's a better strategy? Instead of trying to win the argument, how do you actually change someone's mind?
Bartlett suggests finding common ground first. It's about helping the other person feel understood, creating that space where they're more open to hearing your perspective. He uses this brilliant example of Ronald Reagan's famous question, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" It wasn't about bombarding people with statistics. It was about framing the issue in a way that connected with their personal experiences.
That's clever. It makes you realize how much of persuasion is about emotion and framing, not just logic and facts.
Exactly. And it ties into this fascinating concept called the question behavior effect. Basically, studies have shown that asking questions rather than making statements can be a really powerful way to influence behavior, both in ourselves and others.
So instead of lecturing someone on why they should do something, maybe ask them a question that gets them thinking about it from a new angle.
Exactly. And that leads us to another crucial question. Especially in today's world, how do you make your message stand out? How do you cut through the noise?
Yeah. Everyone's screaming for attention these days. What does Bartlett have to say about that?
Well, he tells this hilarious story about a big blue slide that perfectly illustrates this point.
A slide. What does a slide have to do with business?
It might sound random, but trust me, it's brilliant. So Bartlett was running this fast-growing company, and instead of focusing on typical office perks, he decided to install this massive blue slide right in the middle of their workspace.
Okay, that's definitely not your average water cooler conversation starter.
Right.
What was he thinking?
He was thinking about how to grab attention. And it worked. The media went wild. Everyone was talking about the company with the slide.
Hmm.
And it instantly became their trademark, their differentiator.
So the lesson here is be unexpected. Embrace the absurd. I can see how that would break through the clutter.
Exactly. He uses another great example, Brewdog.
Hmm.
You know, the brewery known for their crazy marketing stunts. Like, who else puts beer-filled showers in their hotels?
Who would even think of that?
It's so outlandish. It's ridiculous. But, you know, it gets people talking, and that's the whole point.
Okay, that's hilarious. I'm not sure I'd actually want to use a beer shower, but I get the idea. It's about being memorable, standing out from the crowd.
Precisely. And there's a scientific principle behind this called habituation. Our brains are bombarded with so much information that we've learned to just tune out the mundane, the predictable. So to really get someone's attention, you need to break that pattern, do something unexpected.
It's like, you know how you stop noticing the hum of the refrigerator after a while? You only really hear it when it suddenly stops.
Exactly. So think about your own work, your industry. What's your blue slide? What's that unexpected element that's going to like jolt people out of autopilot
Yeah.
and make them pay attention to your message?
That's a good question to think about. It's not just about being different for the sake of being different. It's about finding that unique element that genuinely reflects your brand and captures attention. But there's another layer to this idea of standing out, right? It's not just about like big splashy gestures.
You're right. Sometimes it's the subtle details that make all the difference. And that leads us to another fascinating point, the psychology of perception.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. Does he give an example of how this works in the real world?
He does. He shares a story about getting a haircut that felt rushed, even though it took the usual amount of time. Turns out his barber had skipped his usual end of trim routine. You know, a few extra snips here and there. That didn't actually change the haircut, but...
But they created this perception of meticulousness, of going the extra mile.
Exactly. And this sparked a light bulb moment for Bartlett. He calls these small investments that create big shifts in perception psychological moonshots.
I love that term. It makes me think of those progress bars on websites that like encourage you to complete your profile. Filling out the information doesn't actually get any easier.
But it feels more manageable.
Right.
And you're more motivated to actually reach 100%.
Exactly. Okay, I'm starting to see how powerful this concept can be. Any other examples of psychological moonshots in action?
He uses the example of Uber and how they completely revolutionized the taxi experience using psychological principles. Like, for example, the peak end rule. It suggests that people judge an experience based on its most intense point and how it ends. So Uber focuses on ensuring a smooth pickup and a pleasant drop-off, even if the ride itself isn't perfect.
So even if there's a bit of traffic or a slight delay, the overall impression is positive because of those carefully crafted start and end points.
Exactly.
That's so clever.
Or think about idleness aversion. You know, our dislike for feeling unproductive. Uber cleverly shows you the car moving on the map, even if it's just circling the block. It creates the illusion of progress, and it reduces that anxiety of waiting.
So it's not just about the practical service, it's about managing the customer's emotional experience.
Exactly.
That's something we can all apply, no matter what we do.
Absolutely. Think about your own work through this lens. How can you use these subtle psychological nudges to create a more positive and memorable experience for your clients or customers?
That's a good challenge. Okay, but before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go back to something we touched on earlier. The whole idea of having a plan B, Bartlett makes this bold claim that having a backup plan can actually sabotage your plan A. And I got to be honest, that one really threw me for a loop.
It seems counterintuitive, but when you dig into the psychology, it actually makes a lot of sense. When you have a plan B, you subconsciously reduce the fear of failure associated with plan A.
So you're not all in, not fully committed to making that first plan work because you have a safety net that takes the pressure off.
Exactly. And your attention gets divided. Instead of being laser focused on your primary goal, you're constantly thinking about that alternative path. Bartlett argues that the most successful people are intensely focused on their plan A, and they don't even waste energy on backup plans.
It's like those explorers who would burn their ships after landing on a new shore, so there was no turning back.
Exactly.
Talk about commitment.
Right, it forces you to go all in. But of course, even with laser focus, you can't do everything yourself, especially as your business starts to grow. And this is where Bartlett's advice, ask who, not how, comes in.
Okay, I'm listening. What does that mean?
Instead of getting bogged down by the how of doing everything yourself, ask yourself, who is the best person to handle this for me? It's about embracing delegation and building a team that can help you achieve your vision.
Okay, I
Yeah.
get that. Letting go of that control can be really tough,
Hmm.
but it's essential for growth.
Exactly. And it ties back to that self-mastery we were talking about earlier. Recognizing your limitations and knowing when to bring in the right people is a key part of that journey.
I think Steve Jobs said it best. It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. Delegating,
Yeah.
trusting your team, giving them the space to excel. That's how you scale a business.
Absolutely. And speaking of building a thriving company, Bartlett makes this kind of provocative statement
Right.
about creating a cult mentality, which might sound a little
A
extreme.
cult that doesn't exactly scream healthy work environment.
I know. But he's not talking about anything sinister or manipulative. He's
Mm.
referring to that sense of shared purpose, strong values, and intense commitment that
Yeah.
you see in like the early days of successful startups.
Like everyone's pulling all-nighters,
Yeah.
fueled by ramen and the belief that they're changing the world.
Exactly. That kind of energy and shared passion, it's crucial in those early stages of a company. It's what helps you push through those inevitable challenges and setbacks.
Okay, I'm starting to see what he means. But as the company grows, that cult mentality has to evolve, right? Can't stay stuck in that early stage frenzy.
Exactly. Bartlett actually outlines 4 stages of company growth: cult, growth, enterprise, and decline. And as you move through each stage, the culture needs to adapt to support the new challenges and opportunities.
That's like a living organism. It needs to evolve to survive.
Yeah.
Does he give any examples
Mhm.
how to manage that evolution in the real world?
He does. He shares a personal story about a disastrous investment he almost made. He got caught up in the excitement of this new venture, but thankfully he had a moment of clarity and asked himself a crucial question. Why will this fail?
Interesting. So instead of focusing on all the reasons it could succeed,
Yeah,
he flipped the script and forced himself to see the potential pitfalls.
exactly. And that one question
Hmm.
revealed all these risks he hadn't even considered before. It saved him a ton of time, money, and heartache.
That's a valuable lesson. Instead of getting swept up in the hype, take a step back and ask yourself, why could this go wrong?
Hmm.
What are those potential blind spots I'm missing?
Right. It's about proactively identifying risks, not just blindly chasing potential rewards. He calls this the pre-mortem method.
So you're essentially doing a post-mortem analysis before the project even starts.
Exactly. Imagine the project has failed, and then ask yourself, what were those contributing factors? What went wrong?
It forces you to think critically, to consider all the things that could derail your success, and then hopefully find ways to actually prevent them.
Exactly. It's about being proactive, not reactive. And that's a theme that runs throughout Bartlett's whole book.
Okay, so to recap, we've got master yourself, think counterintuitively, understand psychology, build the right team and culture, and don't be afraid to ask those tough, uncomfortable questions.
That's a great summary.
Yeah.
And it's really just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to uncover. We'll be back with even more insights from the Diary of a CEO in our next installment of Trending Tidbits.
Stay tuned. And in the meantime, start thinking about what your blue slide might be.
Welcome back to Trending Tidbits.
We're going even deeper into Stephen Bartlett's The Diary of a CEO, and let me tell you, things are about to get interesting. Last time, we talked about laying that solid foundation for success, but now Bartlett throws us a curveball.
Mm-hmm.
He says that sometimes it's actually strategically smart to piss people off.
Yeah.
Whoa, hold on. Did I hear that right? Strategically piss people off.
Ah.
That doesn't exactly sound like
Right.
the best recipe for business success.
I know it sounds kind of crazy, but Bartlett's point is that indifference is basically the kiss of death for any brand. If nobody loves you or hates you, you just become background noise.
You're invisible.
Yeah.
Just another face in the crowd.
Exactly. To stand out, you need to evoke strong emotions, even if that means alienating some people along the way. Think of those self-help books with, like, curse words splashed across the cover. It's a tactic, for sure, but it grabs your attention, and it makes you wonder, what is inside this thing?
Right. It's like that old saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity. As long as people are talking about you, you're good.
Yeah, there's definitely a grain of truth to that, but you have to be strategic about it. It's not about being controversial just to stir the pot. It's about having a strong point of view that you're not afraid to express, even if it ruffles a few feathers along the way.
Okay, so how do you find that sweet spot? Like, how do you walk that tightrope? between being bold and not completely alienating your target audience?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right? I think it comes down to deeply understanding your audience, their values, their pain points, knowing what will resonate with them, and being willing to take calculated risks.
So it's more of an art than a science.
Definitely, it requires intuition, creativity, and honestly, a willingness to experiment. And speaking of experimenting, Bartlett emphasizes the importance of embracing failure, but not in that like generic motivational poster kind of way.
How so? What's different about his approach to failure?
Well, he introduces this concept of outfailing the competition.
Outfailing. What does that even mean?
It means being willing to experiment more, iterate faster, and learn from your mistakes quicker than anyone else in your field. Basically, the faster you fail, the faster you learn what works. And that learning curve becomes your secret weapon.
So it's about turning failure into feedback, using it to refine your approach and stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly. He uses the example of Booking.com. They are constantly running experiments on their website, testing different features, layouts, everything. Some experiments are winners, some are duds. But the point is, they're constantly gathering data, learning and improving. And that's a big part of why they're so successful.
So it's like that fail fast, fail often philosophy, but with a laser focus on extracting those valuable insights from your failures.
Exactly. And Bartlett actually outlines 5 key principles for building a company culture that really embraces failure. One is removing bureaucracy. The less red tape, the faster you can move, the more you can experiment.
It's about empowering your team to take risks and try new things
Mhm.
without being bogged down by endless approvals and procedures.
Yep, exactly. Another crucial principle is actually incentivizing failure. Now, this doesn't mean rewarding people for making mistakes, but it does mean creating an environment where people feel safe to take risks, knowing that if something doesn't work, it's not the end of the world.
It's about celebrating the learning process, not just the wins,
Yay.
which honestly can be a huge cultural shift for some companies.
Absolutely, but it's essential if you want to foster that culture of innovation.
Mhm.
And remember that concept of sharing failure. It's not just about learning from your own mistakes, but also from the collective wisdom of your team.
Right. If everyone's hiding your mistakes,
Yeah,
you're missing out on so many valuable learning opportunities.
exactly. So create a culture where it's okay to talk about what went wrong, what you learned, and how you can do better next time. That's how you turn failure into a stepping stone towards success.
It's about shifting that perspective
Hmm.
from failure is bad to failure is data.
I love that. Yeah, it's a much more empowering way to approach those inevitable bumps in the road.
Okay, so we've talked about embracing failure and building a strong team. But what about the person at the helm? What insights does Bartlett offer about leadership?
Well, he has this fascinating chapter on the importance of being an inconsistent leader, which might sound a bit strange at first.
Inconsistent. Isn't consistency supposed to be one of the hallmarks of great leadership?
You'd think so, right. But Bartlett's point is that every team member is different. They have different personalities, different motivations, and different ways of responding to feedback.
So a one-size-fits-all approach to leadership isn't going to be effective.
Exactly. He uses this great example of Sir Alex Ferguson, the legendary Manchester United manager.
Okay. Sir Alex is definitely someone worth learning from.
For sure. So Ferguson was known for his incredible ability to connect with each player on a personal level. He knew when to be tough, when to be supportive, when to, crack a joke. He was a master of adapting his approach to get the best out of each individual.
So he was like a leadership chameleon, changing his colors to suit each situation.
That's a great analogy. A truly effective leader understands that what motivates one person might demotivate another. It's about being adaptable, perceptive, and knowing how to tailor your approach to each individual on your team.
So there's no, magic formula for leadership, no one-size-fits-all playbook.
Nope. It's about being present, being observant, and being willing to adjust your style as needed. It's about understanding the human element of leadership. Which brings us to one of the final, and perhaps most intriguing, insights from the book.
Okay, lay it on me. What's his final gem?
Well, Bartlett dives into the importance of building discipline, but he goes beyond the usual willpower and grit. He breaks it down into a simple yet powerful equation.
An equation. Okay, now you've got my attention.
He calls it the discipline equation, and it looks like this. Discipline equals the value of the goal plus the reward of the pursuit minus the cost of the pursuit.
Interesting. So it's not just about how badly you want to achieve something. It's also about how much you enjoy the process of actually getting there.
Exactly. And how much you're willing to sacrifice along the way. Because the cost of pursuing a goal outweighs the value of achieving it. Plus the enjoyment you get from the journey, your discipline is going to crumble.
It's like a cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah.
For your goals, you have to be honest with yourself about what you're willing to invest, not just in terms of time and energy, but also in terms of potential sacrifices.
Right. And Bartlett argues that the most disciplined people are the ones who have found goals that truly align with their values, goals that they genuinely enjoy pursuing, and where the costs feel manageable.
Makes sense. If you're constantly battling yourself, feeling miserable, and the reward doesn't even seem worth the effort, you're not going to stick with it. It's a recipe for burnout.
Totally. It's about finding that sweet spot where passion, purpose, and effort all align. And when those elements come together, discipline becomes less about forcing yourself and more about like flowing with the energy of your chosen path.
I love that. It takes the pressure off that whole, I just need to be more disciplined mentality.
Yeah.
And shifts the focus to finding the right goals in the first place.
Right. It's a much more holistic and sustainable approach to achieving long-term success.
Speaking of success, I think we've squeezed every last drop of wisdom out of this part of the diary of a CEO.
Yeah, we've covered so much ground already.
From embracing failure to building discipline and everything in between. But hold on to your hats, folks, because we're diving back in for one final round of juicy insights from Stephen Bartlett.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with the final installment of Trending Tidbits.
All right, welcome back to Trending Tidbits. Ready for the grand finale of our Stephen Bartlett deep dive.
You know it. We've saved some of those like really counterintuitive, thought-provoking gems for last.
Ooh, okay, give me a teaser. What kind of mind-bending ideas are we exploring today?
Well, Bartlett makes this really interesting argument that sometimes less is more. Like he explains how adding something valuable to a product can actually decrease its perceived value.
What? Doesn't more always equal better?
Not necessarily. He uses this example of his favorite clothing brand. They started like including their logo on this little tag on the outside of their clothes. And before that, their clothes had this like understated elegance. But with the logo, it kind of felt like they were trying too hard.
Ah, so it's like they were shouting their brand instead of letting the quality speak for itself.
Yeah, exactly. The logo, which was meant to add value, actually kind of cheapened the brand. It's like that saying, money talks, wealth whispers. Sometimes the subtle details, the things that are missing, create a stronger impression than a loud, in-your-face approach.
So it's about knowing when to hold back, when to let the product or service speak for itself. Does he give any other examples of this, like less is more principle?
He does. He talks about Whoop, the fitness tracker. They intentionally chose not to include a time display on the device.
Really? They left out a feature that seems so basic and that people probably expect from a wearable.
Yeah. They believe that adding a screen would have turned it into, like, just another smartwatch. But by not having a screen, they're reinforcing this perception that their device is like a specialized tool for serious athletes.
So it's like they're saying, if you're checking the time, you're not focused enough on your workout.
Exactly. It's about making a statement through omission. It's about focusing on what truly sets you apart, not just trying to be everything to everyone.
That's a good one. And it's a powerful lesson, not just for product design, but for any kind of communication, really. It's about being intentional, about choosing what to leave out, just as carefully as you choose what to include.
Absolutely. And this ties into another crucial insight from Bartlett, the power of framing. He argues that the way you present something, the context you provide, has a huge impact on how it's perceived.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely experienced that. The same information can feel totally different depending on how it's presented. Does he have a real-life example of this?
Yeah. He tells a story about how he ended up buying a house he wasn't initially that interested in, simply because of the way the estate agent presented the options.
Okay, how did the estate agent work their magic?
Well, they showed Bartlett 3 houses, one that was way too expensive, one that was too small, and one that was just right, fitting perfectly within his budget and needs. Classic example of the Goldilocks effect.
Ah. So by showing those other options, the agent kind of subconsciously nudged him towards that middle option, the one they wanted him to choose all along.
Exactly. The framing made all the difference. If the agent had only shown him that middle option in isolation, he might not have been as enthusiastic about it.
That's so fascinating. It's like a subtle form of manipulation. But in this case, it led to a positive outcome.
Yeah. It highlights how powerful it can be to understand how people make decisions and use that knowledge to present your product, your service, even just an idea,
Yeah.
in the most persuasive way possible.
So it's not just about what you say. It's about how you say it, the context you create, the choices you offer.
Exactly. And this applies to so many areas of life, not just real estate. Think about menu design, pricing strategies, online shopping. It's everywhere. Once you start to see it, you can't unsee it.
It's like a secret code to understanding human behavior. Okay, so we've got less is more in framing.
Yeah.
What other, marketing ninja tricks does Bartlett have up his sleeve?
Well, he talks about this concept of letting them try and they will buy, which basically highlights the power of ownership.
Oh, I know this one. Like when you try on a pair of shoes in a store, and suddenly you just can't imagine leaving without them.
Exactly. That simple act of trying something on creates this sense of ownership. And research shows that people value things more highly once they feel like they own them.
There's that study with chimpanzees, right?
Yes.
Yes.
They found that chimps were way less likely to trade a piece of food they were already holding, even if it wasn't even their favorite type of food. So this sense of ownership, it runs deep.
It's like finders keepers. Once it's in your possession,
Yeah.
even temporarily, it's
Yeah.
harder to let go.
That's why things like free trials and money-back guarantees and test drives are so effective. They allow people to experience a product or service firsthand and create that sense of ownership, which then increases their likelihood of actually buying.
You're giving them a taste of what it feels like to own it, and then it's harder to resist.
Exactly. So if you want someone to really fall in love with your offering, let them experience it firsthand.
Okay, got it. Experience is key.
Yeah, for sure. Now, before we wrap things up, there's one final overarching theme that Bartlett really emphasizes, and it's something that resonated with me.
I'm all ears.
He talks about the importance of telling stories, and not just in marketing, but in life.
Yeah. Stories are powerful. They connect us. They help us make sense of the world. They inspire action.
Right. Bartlett actually takes it a step further. He argues that stories are like the currency of humanity. They're how we communicate ideas, build relationships, inspire action.
And in a world that's so saturated with information, a good story can really cut through all the noise and capture people's hearts and minds.
Exactly. He has this great quote. He says, "The most convincing sign that someone will achieve new results in the future is new behavior in the present. It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk. It's about demonstrating your values through your actions, your choices, your story."
That's powerful. It's not about creating some perfect, polished narrative. It's about living a life that's worth telling a story about.
Exactly. It's about being authentic, being vulnerable, and letting your story unfold organically. And that's a message that resonates far beyond the world of business.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've officially reached the end of our Trending Tidbits journey into Stephen Bartlett's The Diary of a CEO. We explored so many fascinating ideas, from mastering your inner world to crafting a compelling narrative and everything in between.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride.
If any of these ideas resonated with you, I highly recommend checking out the full book. It's really a treasure trove of insights for anyone who's building a business, leading a team, or just trying to navigate the complexities of life with more intention and awareness.
Totally.
It's a book that will make you think differently, question your assumptions, and hopefully inspire you to create your own blue slide moment.
Yes. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep telling your story